I want to say that this series was born a little bit because we're on a split screen. And I don't even mean the video screen, but an actual split screen between an unfolding tragedy that just we can't get out of. And when I say we, I mean the Jewish people, wherever it is that we live, and the Palestinian people, wherever they live. And this extraordinary work that's being done on the ground in Israel by everyday citizens. I would say ordinary, but there's nothing ordinary about them. As you will see this morning, this is a bit of a family affair. As you know, Elan Ezrachi and Naamah Kelman are married to one another. But today they've brought two guests, one of whom they're related to. And I won't say anything more about that, but to pass it to Elan and Naamah with our gratitude for your willingness to be with us and help us feel the connection and the hope and the power of civil society right now. Nothing is more important for us in America right now than to feel as much as we can what you're feeling, and to be able to share as much as we can what you're experiencing, so that none of us feels alone. So thank you again, and I'm going to pass it off to whoever is doing the introduction this morning. And before I forget, because I'll forget at the end, a huge thanks to Marina Nebro, who is managing the tech, and so much else. Let's just be very clear. If you have questions as people are speaking, please put them in the chat, and Marina will manage them. Thanks very much.
Good. I will take the lead to this morning's session. So welcome to the third session in our four-part series. Now we're also getting a little more experience on how to manage these sessions.
Elan, I'm going to just tell you that there's a movement afoot to make it a longer series than 4 parts. So
okay,
we'll see.
Don't threaten me. We'll manage. Soon you will understand why in the third session Naamah and I are not sitting in the same screen. There's actually a reason for that, which I think you'll find interesting. But before I start, I just like to share with you that the impression that the rally in Washington made on scores and scores of Israelis from all walks of life. And this is anything from our Facebook feeds to the people on the street, to the mass media. Everybody was watching it, trying to understand what is going on and listen to the content and I think Israelis were deeply, deeply moved. We're going to continue to discuss that perhaps in the extension of the series. But I think it's really important for those of you who were there or who wanted to be there but couldn't, to know that it echoed very, very strongly in Israel. Naamah, you are now not in Jerusalem, you're in Haifa. Why are you in Haifa? Share with us very briefly why you're there, and then we will move on to the formal part of the program today.
So Boker Tov to everybody. I'm in Haifa, a city that very much embraces shared society. I'm at the Leo Beck Center, Education Center, which is our reform center, school systems, sports club, many activities, NGOs, social justice. And I'm here because we are ordaining 3 brand new Israeli rabbis. And although we normally hold the ceremony in Jerusalem at Hebrew Union College, where they have studied for some 4 years, because 2 of our about to be ordinees are Haifa and Northern based. One in particular, who is the spiritual leader of a Russian speaking congregation, and many of her congregants could not necessarily make it all the way to Jerusalem. We've decided to have it in Jerusalem, much more modest than we
Haifa.
usually do. Yeah, so in Haifa, much more modest than we normally do, much more low key, but certainly as moving, as celebratory, as hopeful for our future. Each one of them is an extraordinary story who will keep doing and spreading their holy work. One of them is an actual is a peace activist, and while today is a very sad day for peace activists in Israel, Palestine, we'll hear about that. And I particularly want to thank Hadir Hani for joining us, and particularly on today, where the peace community has just, in a sense, laid Vivian Silver to rest, or joined her for her last journey, and have vowed, all of us, to continue her legacy of pursuing peace among the peoples of this region. So I return. I know this will be a more sober session, but I hope it does give you hope, the activists on the ground. And I know that I leave this session with a great deal of hope as I move to the official ordination of these extraordinary women who continue to promote and advance and live and preach and teach the values that Central Synagogue lives by.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Naamah. So our session today is dedicated to two domains that intercept or overlap. One is shared society, which in the Israeli lexicon means relationships between Jews and Palestinians in Israel, and the work that is done in the northern part of Israel, the Galilee, which people here may know better or not so well. And it is a fascinating domain in Israel. Not everything happens in Jerusalem or in certain neighborhoods in Jerusalem. And there's actually some really interesting work that is going on over there. And we're going to divide the session into two parts. The first will be focused on the work that Rabbi Elan Ezrachi is doing. And then we will have a conversation with Hadir Hani, who's now traveling back to Akko, coming back from the memorial service for Vivian Silver, and we'll contextualize that later. But both of them will, I think, help us put together an elaborate picture of something which is very interesting that is going on all the time, and especially since October 7th. So let me start by introducing Rabbi Elan Ezrachi. I looked all over the internet to try and find out her biography, but then I realized that I can actually make it up myself. To the best of my memory, she was born in 1982. Actually, it was in the middle of the war with Lebanon. So actually the theme of a war is carrying us through from her birth until today. I won't give you her entire description of what she liked to eat for breakfast at age 5, but I will say that eventually she became a significant leader in the Israeli Jewish Renaissance movement, being ordained by Hebrew in college. And about 6 years ago, she moved up to the Lower Galilee to be the spiritual leader of a very interesting congregation called Nigun Halev, which is a non-affiliated, or at least not fully associated with any of the formal streams of Judaism, but she might be able to categorize it better than I do. And aside from leading a community in the northern part of Israel, she's also very involved in interfaith work and shared society. And since the war began, things have both intensified, but also became more complicated. And also, in addition to her work in that area, she also has been interfacing with what we coined in previous sessions the evacuees, those who are being displaced from their homes and villages and towns and are now placed in hotels and makeshift arrangements, sort of a new kind of an Israeli refugee. So she will share with us her work. So nice to have you here, Liora, as we call her Leo, at home. Rabbi Elan Ezrachi Vered. Tell us, what is Nigun Halev?
Well, it's very nice to be here with you. You can call me Leo if you want. It's totally fine. So Nigun Halev is an unaffiliated community that was founded about 24 years ago by grassroots activists in the Jezreel Valley. Even though we're in the Galilee, we call ourselves from the Jezreel Valley, or even better, from the Emek. It's one word, Ha-Emek, the valley. There's only one valley, and that's us. And it was a group of third and fourth generation pioneers of pioneer families, the Chalutzim, who formed the kibbutzim and the moshavim, these kind of agricultural settlements in the Jezreel Valley, and third, fourth generations who were looking for a connection to Jewish spirituality, to some sort of Jewish practice. And from that kind of small group, an entire community grew up and flourished and has been active. Now we're going to celebrate our 24th year very soon. I joined obviously quite a few years after the community is already established and has kind of its own institutions and traditions. And even though I grew up Reform and very much a part of the Reform movement, I still feel like Nigun Halev is also my spiritual home. And I would say that the community is made of mostly kind of what we call secular Israelis, but also people who come from liberal Jewish homes, and people who grew up more Orthodox and left the Orthodox world, and people who are, North African families and are more traditional. So we have an interesting mix, and it's certainly changing as kind of we're shifting into our second generation now of the community. So that's kind of in a bit, and you're always welcome to visit us in the Emek.
So Lior, comes October 7th. How does the war impact your community and the activities of Nigun Halev?
So maybe I'll even start a little bit before. I'll say that we had a really phenomenal holiday season this year. We had lots and lots of events. We even managed for the first time to get money from the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs to fund some of our activities, which was pretty incredible, including 5 days before the war broke out. We had our Sukkot Shalom, our Sukkah of Peace, which is a huge event with 300 participants of Jews and Arabs who were together dancing and singing and eating. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful event. And the night before, we didn't do a Simchat Torah in the morning. We only had on Friday night. And besides our kind of usual crowd, we had a pre-army gap year program of Jews and Arabs. So I have pictures of the night before, the 7th of October, of young women in hijabs dancing with our Torah. That was the image I went to sleep with the night of the 6th of October. And then to go from that and to wake up to such horror was, obviously very jarring and very scary. And it also, of course, took us a while to figure out what was going on. I remember we even did like a Zoom Havdalah that Saturday night, and we thought, this is just some contained event, and we'll give people just a chance to pray. And we had no idea what was really happening. But by the next morning, basically, we had canceled everything that our community does and completely started to mobilize our people to volunteer anywhere they can. First of all, our members kept calling me and saying, what can we do? How can we volunteer? Help us find something to do. Because suddenly everyone was at home and no one was working, and no one went to school. And the hostage situation was starting to kind of unfurl, and people were looking to what to do. So I put together a few pictures to show what we did. Basically, like I said, we canceled everything, and we said, all right, now we're sending our people to volunteer anywhere we can and to figure out what needs to be done. So let me just share, because it's nice to see it in pictures. So it took us a while to find the right projects, because there were so many things, so many people wanted to volunteer. You would show up somewhere and there would be another 40 people and they didn't need you. So after, just in the beginning, honestly, we just bought hundreds of shekels worth of toilet paper and brought them to soldiers, because for some reason, even in the army, they forget to pack that. Then the first project we kind of really embraced was supporting the little village of Kfar Yoshua, which is right in my backyard. I live in a bit of a smaller village, who took in over 90 Thai workers who were evacuated from the south. And we helped them by bringing them money and food and support. And we worked with that little community. And it was really, really, really beautiful. They were there for about 2 weeks. Most of them have gone home at this point because the Thai government evacuated them. But they were so moved by the help and the response. I had a member of my community who literally showed up with, thousands of shekels worth of mattresses so that they could sleep on, brand new, that they bought just because they were all sleeping in a big kind of hall. And what was really beautiful is they brought a monk who I think is actually Jewish originally and then became a Buddhist monk to bless them and give them some spiritual guidance after. So that was one really beautiful project that we helped. And the two women here on the right are two Israeli women from Kfar Yoshua, from this little village. One is actually a Yemenite woman who grew up in the south and then moved to Kfar Yoshua. And the other woman, Noi, is a Thai woman who married an Israeli farmer over 30 years ago, so is fully Israeli by now. And I really fell in love with them. They were my heroes, and just being with them for those 2 weeks while they were kind of trying to help them, find kind of a sense of peace after what they'd been through. And in the end, they cooked us a beautiful Thai meal to say thank you. It was really good, I have to say. So that was kind of one project we kind of latched onto. And we also realized that these are one of the things that communities like ours can do, because everyone wants to help the soldiers and everyone wants to help the people who were evacuated. And sometimes, these poor foreign workers got forgotten in the mix. So we really felt that we were doing Ve'ahavta et hager, as much as we could. This I brought because I liked it so much. My little community in Ramat Yishai painted posters to kind of bring up our spirits. So we got a lovely poster of Biden, and it's now in the entrance to Ramat Yishai, where I live. Then we realized that not only do we need to support outside our community, we need to support our own community. We have at least 10 to 15 families with children in the military, either as reservists or as in active duty. So we're making sure that they're okay and supporting them. We have, people who have different emotional needs, people who are scared. In the beginning, it was extremely scary in our area. No one knew what would happen. So we had to support people who were with anxiety and who were nervous. Young families, we got together just to kind of bake cookies and calm things down. So we realized that we needed to support our own people as well. And then we started working with the evacuees. Now I realize that I started to put together these pictures, and I've already done at least 4 or 5 Kabbalat Shabbat with evacuees since. Basically, what we've been doing is every Friday, besides our own Kabbalat Shabbat, we do at least 2 with evacuees. Mostly we've been in Tiberias, and they've been evacuees from the north, but sometimes in other places as well. And we come and we do a Kabbalat Shabbat for these communities that are stuck in hotels and are kind of refugees in their own country, and are all, kind of, their days are kind of look alike. They're stuck in these hotels, which could be nice, but very, very heavy hearts. Don't know when they'll be coming home. And it's been really moving. And in fact, one community, I've already done it twice, and they want us to come back next week as well. So now I'm the unofficial rabbi of Bet Hillel, which is a little tiny, tiny village on the northern border, just because I'm there almost every week with them. Another thing we started to work on was, how do we protect the delicate fabric of shared society? Nigun Alev has always had a vision that, being a Jewish community in Israel, especially in the north, which is 50% Jews and Arabs, we have to promote, tolerance and fight against racism and promote a shared society. And now we need to do it more than ever. So we've been doing lots of different things. One thing, the Zoom picture here is from a group of spiritual pastoral care leaders that I'm involved with. We have been, since the horrors of October 7th, making sure that every single family who has lost a loved one from the north has a visit from an expert in pastoral care. So it's rabbis, men and women, and social workers who have training in pastoral care and all. And I don't know, I know there's a group like this in Jerusalem and other places. I think ours is the only group that's mixed for Jews and Arabs. We have at least 4 Arab women in our group, and we visit Jewish and Arab victims alike. So this was our Zoom meeting to kind of catch our breath, and I can't show you that many pictures of the shivas that we visit, because that's not as, I couldn't take pictures there, but we've been sending people to every single family. And on the right, you see a picture of the community of Zerzir, which is a Bedouin community in the north, that I think literally a week after they wanted to show their support. So they invited everyone in the area to come and light candles and be together. And this is our group of pastoral care workers and other people visiting the family of a wonderful young man, a paramedic who was murdered at the party in the south. His name was Awad Daraushe. Some of you may know his family member, Muhammad Daraushe, who works at Hartman and also in Givat Chaviva. And we came on a visit, and it was so moving, and the family were so warm and wonderful to us. And they spoke about how scared they are. They're scared of leaving their community and going to Jewish areas. And they were also very generous and told us about what a lovely person he was. So this is us visiting that family. It's hard to read it here, and I can send you it, but it's in Hebrew and in Arabic. Ghadir and I are both involved in a group of interfaith leaders from the Galilee. Men, women of all faiths, Christian, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Druze. We have one Buddhist as well. And we put out a letter, an urgent call for tolerance and peace, and signed by over 100 local Israeli, mostly Galilean religious leaders. So that's another thing that we had been involved with. And I'm really happy to say, this is a picture from last week. We are Dafka now, more important than ever. We're starting our Rosh Chodesh, our once a month gathering for women. It used to be only for the women of Nigun Alev, but this year we're going to start it with the women of Manshid Zabda. It's a local Arab village in our municipality. And this was our first meeting, and we're going to have our first bigger meeting in about a month. And it was really like the first meeting, I came out so happy and smiling. And we've been involved in other things as well, but I can't go into everything, of course. This is just for fun, just to explain how much people wanted to volunteer in Israel. It took me 4 weeks to donate my blood because the lines were so long. And I have the good blood, it's O+. So usually they want my blood, but it took so long to find a place because so many people want to donate. So truly, I think, so much has been said about the mobilization of Israeli society. And I really feel that for me, making sure that the friendships with my Palestinian and Arab friends is strong, protecting them because they're also being persecuted in different ways. And it's hard, but trying to hold space in our hearts and in our language that we use for innocent people who are being hurt in Gaza as well.
If I could just interrupt to remind people to put questions in the chat, and also to let each of our central members know that you have indirectly supported all of this work. As you know, Central Synagogue has an emergency fund for Israel, and not only are we supporting large organizations that are doing extraordinary work on the ground, but we also found small pockets of extraordinary energy, and we used some of the money that was donated to support those communities, and Nigun Halev was one of these communities. particularly because they're not on the radar of some of the big organizations that are sending money. And we really wanted to make sure that money that was donated by Central Synagogue members was really going to the ground to immediately make sure that people were supported. And I honestly am so moved to hear this and proud of our community for its support, but really just really taken by all the work that you're doing. And just to remind everybody that they're doing it on empty tanks themselves. They're doing it in the midst of going to funerals every other day, and their own anxiety and their own fear. So thank you, Lior.
Thank
Yes,
you
and
for your wonderful
thank you, Lior, and thank you, Joy, for those words. We're going to move to the second part, and Lior, you will come in also as we expand the conversation with Radir. I'd like, as a transition, to remind ourselves what we mentioned at the beginning, that today was a very, very sad day for the Israeli peace community and for Israeli society in general, since we heard of the fact that Vivian Silver was actually murdered and not kidnapped, and that news came to us only about 3 or 4 days ago. And today there was a special memorial service at Kibbutz Gezer that Radir just came back from, or is still on her way coming. We'll find out in a second. And I assume that many of you, perhaps all of you, have heard of the story of Vivian Silver. Certainly, all the panelists here have known her to some extent, and I'd like to just screen a few slides that will tell a little bit of her story, and also see the wonderful face of Vivian that we can cherish. So just bear with me for a second. So Vivian, as you can see, was born in 1949. She was 74 when she died. And perhaps maybe Lior, you want to read her quick bio?
Yeah, just a minute. I need to move this. Born in Winnipeg, Canada in 1949 and immigrated to Israel in 1974. She was a social activist involved in projects promoting women's rights and advocating for peace. As the co-director of the Arab Jewish Center for Empowerment, Equality, and Cooperation, Negev Institutes for Strategies of Peace and Economic Development, she worked to improve the lives of the Bedouin community in the Negev, helping to advance a shared society. She was active in the organization Women Wage Peace and a board member of the human rights group B'Tselem, and a volunteer with the Road to Recovery, which helps transport cancer patients from Gaza to Israeli hospitals.
And you might want to add, Lior, her participation in the Nigun Halev Yom Kippur service?
Yeah, I'd actually never met Vivian until 2 weeks before this awful war. She joined Nigun Halev for our services, and because Nigun Halev does Yom Kippur as kind of like a retreat at a hotel, and it's not that big. We're only about 60 or 70 people, and we spent some time together, and she was wonderful and so happy and enjoyed it, and very hard.
Yeah, here you see a picture of her with one of her colleagues, Amal Asana. Some of you may know her, and they're also standing in the fields of Kibbutz Be'eri, where she was killed, that are known for the red flowers that bloom usually in the month of February. So it's a wonderful picture that captures her spirit. And finally, there's a picture of her, and this will be also a segue to my introduction of Radir Hani, where Vivian and Radir are in the same frame.
And Marina just reminded me that Vivian was at Central as part of a panel on prospects for peace that was organized at Central last spring.
Yes, and I'm not surprised to hear that. So I will turn off this presentation, we'll go back to the main stream, and I see that Radir is still driving or being driven. مرحبا يا غدير, يعطيك العافية.
مرحبا, الله يعافيك, شكرا.
It's nice to meet you here. Sorry about the circumstances. Radir is going to speak in Hebrew, and either Lior or I will translate. I'm sure we will be able to manage through this slight hurdle. But let me introduce Radir. She's a product of the town of Akko, or Akka, in the northern part of Israel, on the western Mediterranean, on the coast, north of Haifa. Although she spent many years living also in the Negev, in the south, where I assume she also got to know Vivian. She's an activist. That's really what she is. She's an educator, an activist, and involved in many organizations that I will not mention here. We will be able to perhaps hear from that. So first of all, Radir, if you can just tell us where you're coming from now in Kibbutz Gezer, where you attended the ceremony and spoke in the ceremony in memory of Vivian, our friend and your close friend. You are the first person we know who was there. בבקשה.
כן, תודה רבה. אז כן, הייתי בקיבוץ גזר בטקס פרידה. לצערי, לא הייתה קבורה, הקבורה תהיה מחר, כן, אפשר להגיד מה שנשאר. וויביאן הייתה מהמייסדים של קיבוץ גזר, אז הקהילה שלה בחרה להיפרד ממנה בקיבוץ גזר.
אוקיי, רדיר, אנחנו באמת נעצור את המשפטים שלך קצת מוקדם כדי שאפשר יהיה לתרגם. So Radir just returned from Kibbutz Gezer for the memorial service for her friend Vivian. Vivian was among the founders of the current incarnation of Gezer, even though she lived all of the last few decades in Kibbutz Be'eri in the south. But her friends, her community in Gezer chose to have the event there, which is also in the center of the country.
ויביאן הייתה חברה ושותפה לפעילות למען השלום, לפעילות למען שוויון וצדק חברתי בנגב.
Vivian was a friend and a very powerful activist for equality and for the improvement of the life of Arabs in the Negev.
אין מי שלא מכיר את ויביאן, שהייתה מנכ"לית שותפה יחד עם דוקטור אמל אסאנה אל-חג'וג' בכפרים בנגב, בכפרים הלא מוכרים, נשים, ילדים, כולם מכירים אותה ומוכרים על כל מה שהיא עשתה ותרמה לנגב.
Everyone in the Negev, in the south, knew Vivian, who worked together with her partner, Dr. Amal Esana, who we also showed in the slide, together on with unrecognized villages, with women and children, and with a whole range of social needs in the Negev.
בהספד שלי היום אמרתי שלימדה את כולנו איך להיות בני אדם. היא הייתה אישה כל כך רגישה, הייתה אישה שכל כך הביאה תקווה ברגעי הייאוש הקשים שהיינו נקלעים להם, בכל ארגון שבו היא הייתה פעילה ולוקחת חלק.
So Radir is recalling her eulogy today in Gezer, saying that Vivian just taught us how to be human beings. She was so sensitive and so attuned to the needs of everybody, and she taught us how to be sensitive in every organization, every setting she was involved in.
וכולנו זוכרים משפט אחד שמאוד מרגש שהיא אמרה באחד האירועים של עושות שלום, כשאמרה אין דרך לשלום, השלום הוא הדרך.
She recalls a statement, a saying that Vivian said in one of the gatherings of Women's Wage Peace. There's no road for peace. Peace is the road, or peace is the way. of life. It is really like a principled, a major principle in her life.
אני עבדתי עם ויויאן שנים, היא הייתה המנהלת שלי, אבל אף פעם לא הרגשתי שהיא המנהלת. והיום גם אמרתי, היית לי אחות ואימא, למרות הפרש הגילאים, אבל הרגשתי שהכרתי אותך מילדות, הלב הטוב שהיה לה והאנושיות שבה.
So Radir, who worked under Vivian when she was in the South, said she never felt that Vivian was her superior or her boss, but rather Vivian was like a sister, like a mother, and a friend. וברשותך, רדיר, תסיימי מתי שתרצי, אנחנו רוצים גם לעבור קצת לפעילות שלך בגליל ובכלל בחברה המשותפת מאז שפרצה המלחמה, אבל את תחליטי מתי לסגור את הפינה הזאת.
אני רק רציתי להגיד את הדבר האחרון, שבשביעי לאוקטובר התכתבתי עם ויויאן ואמרתי אולי יש חדירה, כאילו תקצר אחרי שאני אגיד הכל, ואז התכתבתי איתה ואני יודעת שהיא משאירה את הדלת שלה פתוחה, ואמרתי לה אני מקווה שהדלת סגורה, נעולה, סליחה, וכשאמרה שיש בחוץ מחבלים, זה כל כך דאגתי לה ואמרתי לה אני רוצה לבקש שכשתהיה הפוגה שתבוא אליי לעכו, והיא אמרה לי אני אבוא.
So Radir is ending this part by saying that on that Saturday morning of October 7th, she did have an exchange with Vivian, and Vivian said that she is trying to block the terrorists from coming in, and she's trying to stay alive. And Radir told her, please be calm. We hope everything will be okay. And once this is over, you can come to my place in Akko to relax and to rest. And that never happened. Let's move, Radir, if you don't mind, to some of your activities in the Galilee, and especially try and give us a sense, tchusha, of how Palestinians, Israeli citizens are feeling since October 7th, and not only yourself, but also your community, your colleagues, and so on.
אז אני מהיום הראשון, כאילו, כשהתכתבתי עם החברות והחברים מהעוטף, והתחלתי להרגיש את גודל הזוועה, אני מיד פחדתי קודם כל על הקשרים שלנו פה בארץ ביחד, יהודים וערבים, לזה דאגתי.
So from the moment I heard about what's going on in the South, the first thing that came to my mind, in addition to the shock, was what's going to be the status, the fate of the achievements of shared society up until that moment.
ומיד פניתי לכל האנשים, יהודים וערבים, וביקשתי שזה לא ישפיע על המרקם החיים שלנו, ושאנחנו לא ניכנס לתוך הדבר הזה. מאוד פחדתי שנחזור לאירועי מאי 21 פשוט. ואז כתבתי על זה ופניתי לאנשים, בואו לא נאבק אחד בשני, בואו אנחנו נמשיך להיאחז בשותפות והביחד שלנו.
So I immediately turned to my network of friends and colleagues, Jews and Arabs, and I said, let's try and preserve the level of trust and communication that we have, and let's make sure we're not going back to the situation that existed in Israel in May 2021, if people here recall, when there was a real deterioration in relationship between Jews and Arabs, especially in this is not translation, I'm adding a little bit of commentary here, when things were really very tense in Jaffa and Ramla and Lod and Akko and so forth.
Akko, Haifa.
Exactly, in Haifa. And let's try and hold on to what we have and not start blaming each other. And that was one of her first initial reactions to October 7th.
ואז למחרת כשראיתי את גודל האסון, פניתי למנהיגים ולחברה הערבית ואמרתי שזה לא עוד פיגוע, זה לא עוד מבצע, זה טבח מה שקרה, ואנחנו חייבים לגנות את זה, חייבים להשמיע הכל. נכון שאנחנו פלסטינים, אבל אנחנו גם אזרחים ישראלים, ומה שקרה היכה בכולנו חזק.
So when I realized the extent of what happened, I turned to leaders in the Arab community, saying this is not another focused terror attack or some Israeli operation. This is actually a major event. It's a massacre, and we cannot sit on the fence. We have to condemn it. We have to come out and make a clear statement, and that's what I did.
אבל לצערי, מהר מאוד, המדינה התחילה בגם לפלג ולשסע בינינו, אבל רדיפה פוליטית לפלסטינים, אזרחי המדינה, כל פוסט שעלינו, אפילו אם זה היה פסוק מהקוראן, או הזדהות עם הילדים בעזה, שהם לא אשמים, הם חפים מפשע. אנשים נעצרו, סטודנטים הושעו מהלימודים, ומרצים פשוט הושעו לצמיתות מהעבודה.
Okay, so sadly, despite our reaction in the way Radir described, the government, she calls it Hamedina, which is more than the government, it could be also other authorities or other sources, did the opposite and did everything possible to exclude us, to humiliate us, to be suspicious of everything that we said and did. People were fired from their work if they made some kind of a statement. Using even a quote from the Quran was considered something that endangers security. Students were suspended. We were not allowed to show empathy to the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza. And my summary of what you said, Radir, is that there's actually a real deterioration that comes from the mainstream authorities. And maybe Lior, if you want to add to that, please do.
Yeah, I think Radir is right. First of all, mainstream Israelis are very ignorant about things. They see a pasuk or a verse from the Quran, they think it's something, even though it could be just, their own religious belief. And fear is letting people minds go wild, and there's so much fake news. Like, this person said that and that person said that. And I think for me, what I've been trying to do is to just make every single act of cooperation and living together, just amplify those voices. נכון? להגביר את כל הקולות, להדהד את כל מי שחיים ביחד. And and also speak for my Arab friends who can't. If they can't say we have empathy for children in Gaza, then I need to say it.
אפילו להתאבל, לשים תמונה שחורה, תמונת פרופיל בפייסבוק או בטוויטר שחורה, אפילו את זה הם לא רוצים שנעשה. אפילו את זה הם רודפים אותנו ומכנים אותנו תומכי טרור, בגלל שהשחררנו את תמונת הפרופיל, כשהרבה ילדים נפגעו, נהרגו, או בית החולים הותקף, או אפילו את זה, והם לא מבינים שלנו יש גם משפחות בעזה, יש הרבה מהערבים בארץ, יש להם משפחות בעזה, תושבי לוד, תושבי רמלה ויפו והנגב, יש להם הרבה משפחות בעזה. הם לא יכולים לא לדבר על זה.
So even if people did things like just blacken their Facebook profiles in identification with the suffering, it was considered as an act of aggression against Israel, and they were harassed by the authorities, police, and maybe secret services, and so forth. And you have to remember that many Palestinians in Israel actually have relatives in Gaza. A lot of people in Gaza are refugees from various places in Israel today, and this connection is very real, and therefore it's not a statement of support of anything that happened. It's just a basic human expression.
And I'd
ואז
like to, we have only about 15 more minutes. I'm just going to remind people if you have questions, can you put them in the chat? I have a question. Somebody, I think David Halpern from the Israel Policy Forum said, we're not yet at the day after. But I wonder whether you're thinking about the day after, and whether these extraordinary relationships that you've developed can be sustained, and how you imagine rebuilding shared society when the noise has lessened.
I assume you're
אני
Martin,
לא
it's
חושבת על
Radir.
היום שאחרי, אני הבנתי וגם לאורה שלחה לי תרגום. אני לא חושבת על היום שאחרי, אני חושבת שהתפקיד שלנו זה לעצב ולהחליט מה יהיה ביום שאחרי. ובגלל זה אני היום פעילה ביום יום כדי לחזק את הקשרים בין הערבים ליהודים, וגם לדבר במסרים של הגיע הזמן להסכם מדיני.
So certainly I'm involved in thinking about Hayom Shachrei, the day after. I'm doing it in multiple ways, mostly but through investing in strengthening, maintaining and strengthening the relationship with Israelis of all backgrounds, and putting a focus on the need for a political solution down the road.
אז מפגשים משותפים, עשינו כנסים, קודם כל יש את המשמרות סולידריות, שזה 14 משמרי סולידריות בכל רחבי הארץ, של פעילות יהודית ערבית משותפת, או בערים המעורבות, או במרחבים המעורבים. גם ביום הראשון התחלנו בניקיון מקלטים, אחר כך מפגשי שיח על מה שקרה, והתאבלות ביחד, וגם משמר אזרחי, במקום הנשק שבן גביר והממשלה רוצים לחלק לאנשים, אמרנו אנחנו רוצים לשמור על השכונות שלנו ועל הערים שלנו.
So I'm not sure I'll be able to catch all the details of what Radir just said, because she's now describing some real hands-on activities that they're doing. One of them is called Mishmarot Solidariyut. You understand at least one word, and that these were like solidarity vigils, maybe, or some form of gathering of solidarity in 14 locations. Then she mentioned cleaning up of bomb shelters. Then, Lior, maybe you can help me. Maybe you picked up a few other initiatives as well.
אמרתי ניקיון מקלטים וכנסים וקבוצות שיח.
Yeah, and also dialogue circles in various places, so people can just talk eye to eye. All these things are happening, and Radir is invested in them.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is joint action. Masim meshutafim. I think that's the most important thing, and it's the most powerful thing right now.
Doing, not only
just doing things together. It's very hard to talk about each other's pain. I think we can, but a lot of Israelis are not in that space yet. But they can.
יש רוב דומם, ויש רוב שאנחנו מנסים להעיר אותו, ולתת לו לפעול במקום שישב בבית ויגיד, הרסו לנו את השלום, הרסו לנו את זה, אלא לפעול. אז יש לנו 7,000 פעילים במשמרי סולידריות האלה, למשל.
So there's a silent majority, says Radir, that really needs a way to being activated in this situation without being fearful that their activism will actually be counted against them. So I think, Marina, I see that you appeared on the screen.
Yeah, I do.
Rabbi,
I have a question kind of, I think, related to what you're talking about. So this is a question from Facebook from Susan. She says that she's not in New York, and she wants to know about opportunities that people outside of like the New York area, outside of Israel, can do that are not just donations. She wants to be part of this amazing work that you're doing, and perhaps there are thoughts along the lines of what you're saying that can be replicated here, or other things that people outside of the main areas where Central and you guys are working that people can do.
השאלה הייתה מה אנשים מחוץ לישראל יכולים לעזור ולתמוך. Maybe I'll start.
חוץ מכסף.
Yeah. I think realizing that doing something together is more important than speaking our truth. I know that speaking our truth is important and we all want to hear each other's pain, but sometimes we can't. So doing something positive together is better. So, find your local interfaith group and do something positive. If you can't do it for Israel, do it for your own local place. I think that's the most important model. If people can come here, there's plenty of places to volunteer and do positive things together. But for me, at least,
גם שישתפו את הדברים, מה שעכשיו דיברנו ומה שהם שומעים, ושיספרו. אנחנו רואים שיש הפגנות פרו-פלסטיניות או הפגנות פרו-ישראליות, ויש לצערי הרבה אנטישמיות, וזה, אני למשל מבין האנשים שהתנגדו לדבר הזה, אני מבין האנשים הצטרפתי למכתב שכתבנו השמאל בישראל על התגובות של השמאל בעולם, או האי-תגובה של השמאל בעולם על מה שקרה, ואני חלק מכל הקבוצות האלה שכן רוצות לדבר על הביחד. המסרים שלנו הגיעו לבערך 7 מיליון אנשים. הפעילות שאנחנו עושים בארץ ובעולם, נגיד ב-Standing Together, לומדים ביחד, יש לנו במדיה, יש לנו בעברית, יש לנו באנגלית גם פייסבוק, גם אינסטגרם, גם טוויטר, שיש לנו הרבה מסרים והרבה פעילויות, שחשוב מאוד לחזק אותם, ולא את הקול הקיצוני הזה, אם זה ישראלי, או כאילו אם זה ערבי, או אם זה יהודי. הרוב פה רוצים לחיות בשקט ושלום.
You said a few very important things. I don't want to miss them. First of all, you said share, לספר. Just tell the story in every platform that you can. The second point that she mentioned was that she's also aware of the fact that there is a new wave of anti-Semitism that is coming out from the extreme left, and she has actually voiced her made a case against that with a signing of petitions and letters against these waves of anti-Semitism coming from the extreme left, something which again I think is very unique voice. And finally, there's a huge network of people in Israel who are standing together. It's actually a name, it's a label, it's a name of an organization, Omdim Biyachad, and you can find them in English in every platform that you can imagine. So there's so much going on.
ועכשיו נגיד יש חמ"ל משותף שעוזרים למשפחות המפונים וגם למשפחות הבדואיות בכפרים הלא מוכרים, שחלק מהם פונו חולקלו. יש גיוס תרומות ועשייה גם להביא מיגוניות לכפרים הלא מוכרים, והכל במשותף, הכל ערבים ויהודים ביחד. אנחנו עושים את הדברים שהמדינה צריכה לעשות בעצם, כחברה אזרחית.
There's also a joint Jewish-Arab, what we called in the first session, actually in the first two sessions, Hamal, a war room that works both on helping people who are evacuated to the hotels and also to Palestinians who are also suffering from a variety of things like lack of shelters, the unrecognized villages in the south that need help. And there's a joint Jewish-Arab effort to help in places, of course, that the government was supposed to be engaged and failed to do so, a theme that we have seen in the series from the beginning.
ועוד דבר חשוב, הבקשה לחזק את כל הנושא החינוך. אנחנו רואים כמה שנאה יש, ובינתיים הפלסטינים והישראלים, הילדים, גדילים על מציאות ששני הצדדים, בצד השני יש אויב. אני בוועד המנהל של עמותת הגר, יש לנו בית ספר דו-לישוני בבאר שבע, והקמנו את הצופים הערבים היהודים הראשון, שבט הצופים הראשון. עכשיו בתקופה הזו אנחנו חלק מחמ"ל ערבי יהודי, אנחנו מארגנים מעגלי שיח של אנשים מבוגרים, ובאר שבע עיר יחסית ימנית, אבל לנו מאוד מאוד חשוב שכן להביא את האנשים לשבת ולדבר, וגם מפגשים עם הילדים, ילדים ערבים מהנגב שיש להם משפחות בעזה, וילדים יהודים שיש להם קרובי משפחה. לצערי איבדנו זוג שהם בני קהילה של הגר, והאבא היה מורה למוזיקה בבית הספר. אז כולנו מוכים ברמה הזו, אם זה בעזה ואם זה פה בישראל.
אני צריך לעצור אותך, I have to translate this. Radir also mentioned the domain of education. Currently, the way children in Israel are educated is to hate, and to see the other as enemy. That's on the Jewish-Arab seam line. And we must reverse this trend and move into education for tolerance, the opposite of hate. She herself is a board member of an NGO called Hagar in the south, which runs a Jewish-Arab bilingual school, and that's a model, I guess, like Yad B'Yad, that actually allows Jewish and Arab children to study together. And she mentioned also a couple that was murdered. He was a music teacher.
Yeah, that was Elan Troin's grandson.
Mm-hmm.
Or son-in-law and daughter.
Granddaughter and husband, yeah. So Marina, I think you're trying to bring us to a closure, maybe with a statement or maybe another short question that can be answered.
Actually, go ahead, Marina.
I was gonna say I don't have any extra questions, but I was going to, when you're ready, I'll wrap you up and let people know about some things that are coming up.
That would be great. I also want to just add my thanks to both of you, not only for spending this morning with us, but for the extraordinary work that you're both doing, despite everything that each of your communities is experiencing, and to let you know that we are with you. And Marina,
ולי יש בקשה, סורי.
אין בעיה.
רציתי להגיד שיש לי בקשה אחרונה, ושתעזרו לנו לחזק את התקווה, ואת הכמיהה לשלום, ושיהיה פה הסכם מדיני. תעזרו לנו, בחיזוק מרחוק ותמיכה.
So I have a last request. Help us restore and strengthen the hope and the yearning for peace and the yearning for a political solution to our region.
And I just want to add that just how important these friendships are. Radir and I feel like I call you every day just to cry with you. אנחנו בוכות ביחד בטלפון.
כן, אולי תספרי על מה שעשינו עם האלימות, גם אולי ככה בשתי מילים על המפגשים ועל המאבק באלימות המשותף.
Yeah, before Radir also mentioned that even before the 7th of October, both of us had been very, very active in fighting against the violence within the Arab sector in Israeli society, which of course nobody remembers this issue now because of the war, but just the week before we were together in a Bedouin village, Basmat Tabun, comforting grieving families who had suffered a terrible loss. And Radir was one of the main activists of the protest movement. She has spoken in every single place, and really been a tremendous leader. I mean, I feel so lucky to be your friend. And, Radir is the leader we deserve if we would lived in a normal country and we could have wonderful leaders. She's the leader that, I mean, if she was our prime minister, I would be very happy and calm. In the meantime, I just really feel these friendships are so, so important. And like Rabbi Joy said, it's like we do all these little things, but they grow and they grow and they grow. And especially in the Galilee, which is really mixed, we really live together. We really do. So hopefully these voices will.
So we're taking a break next week as you're celebrating Thanksgiving, and we will meet for the 4th and the final. Not so final session in 2 weeks' time, where we're going to talk about trauma and response to trauma, and I think it's going to be equally interesting as the previous ones.
And Marina, could you just remind us the other programs that we've created in the last couple of weeks?
Absolutely. So as we are approaching Thanksgiving, we understand that this can be a tense time for some, especially if multiple people in your family hold differing views. So we are hosting a virtual public program on Monday, November 20th, called Israel at Your Dinner Table, Civil Discourse, and constructive conversations. We are going to have a facilitator from Facing History and Facing Ourselves to lead us through a workshop, an engaging participatory workshop on how to approach these conversations at your Thanksgiving dinner table. So please be on the lookout for that on our website and social media. We also will, as Elan mentioned, our current final session of reports from the Israel's home front is on Thursday, November 30th at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And later that day in the evening, we are going to have an in-person only program, but it is a public program called Leading a Shared Future, Israeli Women Since October, where we're going to hear from 3 women leaders from Israel talk about their experience on October 7th. And since then, as we discuss the importance of having female voices as Israel moves through the situation. So I hope to see you at one or all of these programs.
There also is a program on the 27th with Dr. Rachel Fish and Yair Rosenberg, moderated by Abigail Pograbin, on Anti-Semitism Revealed, and a class with the Hartman Institute on the 28th, 3 sessions at noon. That'll be virtual. And that the first one is on the ethics of war with Shlomo Brody. I'm sure I'm forgetting things. Please check the Israel page on our website. And thanks, everybody. Thank you, Elan. Thank you, Naamah, if you're still there. We're very grateful for all the work that you're doing. And if we don't talk to you before, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Bye.
May all the hostages return home safely.
Chon.